Hello, I'm Anelia. I'm the Science and Communications Coordinator and summer student for the Athabasca Watershed Council, and this is a presentation I put together on benthic invertebrates, just to share a little bit of what I've learned over the summer. So the three main topics we'll be covering in this presentation are what benthics are, why they're important and how they can help us, and what is the EPT. So first up, we have what are benthic invertebrates? Benthic invertebrates are small organisms that live on the bottoms of lakes, rivers, streams, and any wetland. They can either be fully grown, like a worm or a beetle, or they can be in their larval stage, like a stonefly, mayfly, or caddisfly. Many of these invertebrates must be born in the water and spend most of their lives in it. When they reach their adult stage, they normally leave the aquatic environment. So that's like stoneflies, mayflies, and caddisflies. Benthic invertebrates normally live under or attached to rocks, sticks, or other vegetation. They also burrow themselves into sand, dirt, and sediment. This can protect them from predators. So next up we have why are benthic invertebrates important? The main answer here is that they're extremely sensitive to environmental change and therefore they're good indicators of ecosystem health. They can help us detect if there's been a major change in a body of water. Along with that, benthic invertebrates help accelerate nutrient cycling by mixing up the sediment beneath the water when they burrow. Benthic invertebrates decrease turbidity levels because they filter suspended particles like algae. They're also very important parts of fish diets and they're an important link for transferring energy between trophic levels. And lastly, they help contribute to nitrification, so the oxidization of ammonia to nitrite and then nitrite to nitrate. And then denitrification is just the exact same process backwards. So this slide goes along with the last one because we know why benthic invertebrates are important, but now we need to know what they need to survive. So they feed on things like leaves, algae, and bacteria. They need clear water, not full of sediment and dirt, in order to breathe. As we mentioned, they're very sensitive to changes in their environment, so they need a consistent water temperature. We also mentioned that they like to burrow themselves in sediment and dirt, so they do need shelter to protect themselves from predators. And I also already mentioned that they need enough oxygen. So not only does their water need to be fairly clear and clean, but there also needs to be enough dissolved oxygen so that they can breathe. The absence of dissolved oxygen is called anoxia, and a decrease in dissolved oxygen is called hypoxia. And that is one of the main reasons that benthic populations decline. So now we have how are benthic populations affected. The abundance of benthic invertebrates can be influenced by a variety of physical parameters. Two that I mentioned before are water temperature and depth and dissolved oxygen concentrations. A couple more of them are pH, salinity, sedimentation, productivity and competition, and a big one is agricultural and industrial runoff. The heavy metals and toxins from agriculture, industrial, and domestic work can have several lethal effects on benthic invertebrates. As we mentioned, because they're so sensitive to change, if one of their habitats is contaminated, communities tend to become simplified. They become dominated by fewer, more tolerant species able to survive and reproduce under rough conditions. They can also form mutations and abnormalities that can occur from the toxins in the water or in the sediment. So the third topic we're going to be covering is what is the EPT? Stoneflies, caddisflies, and mayflies can be grouped together into something known as the EPT. I brought up these types of flies a few times already because they are some of the most important benthic invertebrates that we can study. These benthics help us understand water quality because they're so sensitive to change. And so the EPT abbreviation just helps us remember these important ones. So the EPT is the percentage of organisms belonging to the taxa Ephemeroptera, Plecoptera, and Trichoptera. These taxa are very sensitive to pollution and they're a good indicator of ecosystem and water health. More of these organisms can indicate good environmental conditions. So the more of these flies that there are, the better. So here I just thought it'd be easier to see that the E stands for Ephemeroptera, which also stands for mayfly. The P in EPT stands for Plecoptera, which also means stonefly, and the T stands for Trichoptera, which means caddisfly. And then the pictures to the right, on top there's just adult caddisfly. Below that there's the stonefly life cycle, and then below that is the mayfly life cycle. The stonefly and mayfly life cycles look pretty similar, however, there are ways to distinguish which is which. So that leads us to this page, and I just made this so we can help distinguish between mayflies, stoneflies, and caddisflies when they're in their larval stages. So the first distinguishing feature on the mayfly is that it has 3 filament tails, whereas the stonefly only has 2. Another thing that differentiates these two is the feathery gills on the mayfly, but not on the stonefly. A really obvious one for the caddisfly is that it makes a case out of pebbles, sticks, or leaves, whereas the stonefly and mayfly don't do that. However, when it does not have a case, it has 2 appendages on the bottom of it, and it looks quite different from the stonefly because the stoneflies have 2 long tails, whereas the caddisfly only has 2 short appendages. And of course, the mayfly has the 3 long tails. So that basically finishes off this presentation. However, if you want to find out more information, you can go to the Athabasca Watershed Council website, and there will be lots of information on the rivers, streams, lakes in the Athabasca watershed, and also a lot of information on the benthics. Along with that, I wrote a small blog post, and it is also on the website, just covering more stuff on the EPT. And finally, I just want to thank Alberta Conservation Association because without them, I wouldn't have been able to do work with the AWC this summer, and a lot of our benthic research couldn't have been carried out. So thank you so much.